At the point of filming this video, I've experienced 21 days on Iona. 7 days cruising the Norwegian Fjords. I always have to concentrate when I say that. And 14 days cruising to the Canary Islands and back. Outside of being a crazy cruise fanatic, and some people spend a tremendous amount of time on these ships, that is easily enough time to form an opinion on my P&O experience. Quite simply, I wanted to start international travel again, but it seemed, at least in the first half of 2022, that travelling by plane was still fraught with risk. For every person who seemed to breeze through the process, there was reports of people missing planes and having all sorts of trouble. So my answer to this was to see what cruises left from Southampton. Ultimately, I chose P&O because of the price, which did surprise me. I didn't expect them to be the cheapest, and because I was intrigued by their new ship, Iona. I was intrigued about Iona because it seemed to be shaking up the P&O norms, and shaking them up in my favour. You know, less stringent dress codes, reduced formal nights, dropping the fixed set dining. It was also going to the Norwegian Fjords, which was something I was looking into doing, but it was getting caught up in the travel chaos of 2022. And experiencing it by a cruise is an interesting option. The Norwegian Fjords cruise worked out so well, I decided to double the length and go to the Canary Islands later in the year. Cost is important. It's important because there is a risk with this video that it's going to be perceived as negative because it's not entirely positive. At the time I did these cruises, no other cruise line from Southampton came close to matching the ticket price, considering my approach to cruising, which is solo and I don't drink much alcohol. The Norwegian Fjords cruise cost me 700 quid and the Canary Islands cruise cost me 1k exactly. This is solo pricing. The Canary Island cruises added no solo premium and even give me cruise credit. So you could argue I should debit that 200 odd quid cruise credit off the 1k. In summary, P&O, at least in how I experienced it in 2022, had the best prices if you found the right cruise. And this was a surprise. I fully expected them to be expensive. In terms of the ship, I really liked Iona. I did it twice, so this shouldn't be a surprise, right? It's not perfect. I'd prefer a full-on relaxing observation lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows rather than what Iona has as an alternative, which is sort of like the SkyDome and the atrium. But neither of them are as good as, you know, a proper full-on wraparound observation lounge. But let's deal with the elephant in the room. Is Iona too big? I mean, it's big, right? Look, Iona is the 9th biggest ship in the world as of filming this video. It is by any definition very big. Statistically, you are likely to be on a Royal Caribbean ship to cruise on a larger ship. They're not the only ships bigger, but they account for at least half, right? The weird thing is I didn't find the ship to be really any bigger than the Norwegian Bliss. And when I looked up the Norwegian Bliss, I was actually quite surprised to find that it's 26th in the list. So I thought they'd be closer together. A lot of it comes down to layout and what the tonnage is used for, of course. I love the outside environments on Iona, the various areas at the aft of the ship, the numerous hot tubs positioned around the ships, especially on the wraparound promenade deck. And the wraparound promenade deck is easily the best feature of the ship for me. It's great for relaxing in the sun, assuming you get some. It's amazing for just ambling around, even when the weather isn't that great, just doing a full round of the deck. It's amazing how many steps you get in. The wraparound promenade deck is basically everything. I also like the SkyDome. It's generally the place I'd go to in order to relax after eating. I'd read a book and have whatever act or show was going on in the background, and I'd be quite happy. I was using it because there wasn't a specific lounge that worked for me, but it was still a great place. The trouble is it's quite popular, so sometimes it can be challenging to find the lounge style seating. You can significantly increase your chances by counter-programming the ship, right? Not going for your meal at the same time as everyone else, so you've got your meal out of the way, so therefore you you sweep into the SkyDome as everyone's enjoying the main dining room. So there is ways around it, but it doesn't always work. It was definitely more difficult to get my prime SkyDome seating on the Canary cruise than it was the Fjords cruise. It's worth noting I rarely went to the parts of Iona that are forward of the atrium. I must admit, I only realised this when filming this video, and I think there's just not much forward of the atrium that I visit much. This is possibly one reason I didn't find it as big, as it meant I rarely visited maybe just under a third of the ship. The only time I did was for the Headlines Theatre, but that was only maybe a couple of nights a week, and if you had to get off the forward gangplank. On both cruises I stayed in an inside cabin on deck 15, and it was perfectly fine, right? I liked the layout with the TV at the end of the bed. I have seen some images suggesting some inside cabins have the TV to the side of the bed. I probably would find that irritating over a long cruise, so I did like the one that had it at the end. The bathroom was enough, I had enough space, but then I travel like someone who's moving around with carry-on luggage all the time. I couldn't really get away with that on my Canary Islands cruise, but even then I brought too much and could have brought less, and brought substantially less than other people. So I found there was plenty of storage. I could see how other people might run out, but I found it fine. The cabin stewards did a great job. On both cruises they were very friendly and did a fantastic job of remembering everyone's names. Or at least I assumed they remembered everyone's names. They at least remembered mine. I mean, I wouldn't remember everyone's names. But also, I don't expect much. I just expect a clean room, right? I'm fine with people not entering my room again in the evening just to fancily turn down the sheets. But I did like returning to my room, once they got used to my pattern of moving in and out of it, to have that nice new clean smell. They definitely have a specific thing they spritz around, and it was really nice to return to the room being cleaned. I was quite surprised. It meant more to me than when it happens in a hotel. I don't really know, Matt. I don't really know why. So my inside cabin experience gets a full thumbs up, and I was perfectly fine. How to describe the food on Iona? As it's taken me a few attempts, because there was obviously some about it that didn't match up to what I wanted, but I also don't want to describe it as terrible as and awful. It's in that strange middle ground, right? I think I can describe it in two ways. It was disappointing on my first cruise based on maybe what I was hoping for going in. And obviously I acclimatized and knew what my expectation was on my second cruise. And another way to describe it is, a lot of it just isn't that exciting. It's not bad, it's not unedible, it's not like, oh my God, this is awful. It's not very exciting. I wouldn't call, for the most part, the food on Iona a feature, right? But we'll come back to that. Let's see what I did like first. I loved the Keel and Cow, specifically the Prime Minister burger. I've had the Prime Minister burger 4 times across 3 weeks of cruising. There is loads of other things on the menu that look great, like their steaks and stuff, but it is actually the only thing I've tried. I'd make time for the Prime Minister burger on any Iona cruise, and I'd probably have it at least once a week. Is it the best burger on a cruise ship like they claim? I haven't sampled enough to know, but it's possible. The steak on a stone at the beach house. That was the single thing I had that had a sort of wow factor, right? What you're ordering looks interesting when it comes out and it's sizzling away and everyone turns around to see what you've ordered and you're like, okay, that's interesting. So that was the best thing I had. And now, luckily, it matched up in terms of taste, right? It's basically a fillet steak that comes out on a hot or salt stone and slowly cooks on your table in front of you. And it's that combination that gives you that sort of different experience. I've tried both the hot and the salt stone, and I prefer the latter. So I highly recommend doing that. Do it at least once, right, on your cruise. The other thing is the Quays, which many people might find surprising because it's counter service, but don't let that put you off. The Quays is some of the best food on Iona, I think. The Quays, it's like street food style stands, and these are something that are becoming a feature of cruise lines as they sort of become a counter to the buffet. I mean, you can see why, right? It allows for set menus that can be repeated with set ingredients with a significant level of quality. So I suspect what it means they can do is they can get more quality output regular at a cheaper price and everyone wins. If the Quays is an example of how this works, I'm all for it. And I would love to sample the Quays on a much more epic basis that exists on NCL Prima. But that ship is so costly. Anyway, the fish and chips, the Asian bowls and the southern fried chicken are all great. I would just avoid the burgers. The patties in those burgers just weren't very nice. I mean, some people like them. I don't understand how they can. But yeah, just avoid the burgers. Everything else is great. I'd even call out the fish and chips, the katsu chicken curry and the peanut pork as, I mean, they're just really nice. Sindhu was also great. And I'd have liked to have tried that more. But I wasn't really aware of how popular it was on the Fjords cruise, so I couldn't get in. I got in on my Canary Islands cruise, but I couldn't get in twice. But it's really nice. The only thing I would warn you against, which I think surprises some people, is it doesn't... I'm not an expert on Indian food, right? So all I can say is it's not Indian food like you would experience in an Indian takeaway or your local Indian restaurant. It has a different sort of range of tastes, but it is very nice. I have to say though, the rest of the food across the main dining restaurants, the Olive Grove, the Horizon Buffet and Taste 360, it was nice enough to eat. It just wasn't very inspiring or had that sort of wow factor to make you want to come back. It became sort of functional. I can't comment on the Epicurean or experiences like the Limelight Club or the Captain's Table, as I didn't do those. I have to say, the fact that the Captain's Table, well, first, doesn't have the captain. It seems like some sort of weird overflow experience. And it basically just has people dressed up in fancy clothes in a section of the buffet. It's not even a sectioned off section of the buffet. I at least on 2 occasions, walked in via one buffet entrance and literally ambled through all these people, you know, in their posh togs. Stupid. What the hell is going on with Iona's buffet? This was one of the biggest shocks, right? Okay, it's not big enough, and there's a distinct lack of variety. It's not a problem. I can get food. I had no problem using it. It's just weird, right? It's not that the space is small. It's the fact that they only use 50% of it or less. And the selection definitely doesn't match up to my pre-pandemic cruise. But I don't think it is a post-pandemic thing. Or at least it's only a post-pandemic thing on P&O. As you see videos of other cruise lines in the same period of time, and their buffets are still that vibrant, colourful, varied palette sort of experience, right? I realise some of the variety is impacted by the Quays, because that takes away those counters, right? But P&O's buffet is not a place to expect to be surprised. I had 2 very different entertainment experiences across my 2 cruises. You'd be glad to know it was an improvement in experience. The entertainment I can give a view on are the shows and bands in the SkyDome and the shows in the headliner theatre. The musical acts in the SkyDome, what can I say? I like them. They get a lot of complaints, though a lot of the time it's because of the bad acoustics in the SkyDome, not the acts themselves, so that's fair enough. Since my ear isn't that discerning, it doesn't really bother me, and I'm not exactly watching the shows, to be honest, in the first place. They're sort of on in the background as I'm reading. The acts varied from a girl band trio, the house band doing varied stuff, a female guitarist, a male guitarist doing rock songs, and even the odd tribute act. One of the best things I heard was the guy doing the rock songs with his guitar brought on one of the singers from the headliners show, and they did a cover version of Shallow, and that was really good. That was like actually impressive. Then you have Creative Viva. I think that's how you pronounce it. Creative Viva, Masters of Daring. Daring is the last thing they are. The challenge with Creative Viva is they're a cut price Cirque du Soleil. Now, why they're cut price could be many different reasons, right? Maybe they're cut price because of ability, or maybe their ability is fine, but it's the venue restrictions, the range of performers they have available, or the poverty of imagination. Who knows? I just know ultimately it means they're a cut price Cirque du Soleil. This means what you sort of get is some of the costumes, but they're not as good. All of the interpretive dance for way too long. None of the excitement to sort of interlude between those interpretive dance bits. And it results in shows that are just, well, perplexing, if I was to be honest. That's the best way I'd describe them. They're just perplexing. It's the headliner theatre shows that I came around on. On the Fjords cruise, I didn't watch any of them, I have to admit. I only had a week. There was scenery to see and it was light until 2 a.m. I'd also heard the shows were an exercise in people just trying a bit too hard, so I didn't bother. Now, the Canary Islands cruise was a different prospect, of course, because I had 14 evenings to fill. I mean, that's a lot of evenings. So I did try some of them out. And I must admit, some of them I thought were good, and some of them were okay and I didn't regret seeing, right? None of them were as good as watching the literal Broadway extravagance and amazingness of Six on the Norwegian Bliss, because that was actually a heading to Broadway show that it was just amazing, right? The headliner theatre is not that, but it does have a range of digital screens, and the best shows are the ones that use those very, very well, along with quite elaborate physical sets and stuff. So some of the shows are quite good, right? Just don't expect Broadway or anything like that. Okay. I did think very hard about including this section, but it did occasionally, rarely, but occasionally, punctuate my personal bubble of Nirvana. And that is, it's very British. I mean, this is a positive for many people on the cruise line. I even had one couple say of NCL that they bet it catered for different tastes. And I went, okay, yeah, it probably does. I imagined them to say more for families or more for younger people. But no, they said American rather than British. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm of such an international mindset, it never really occurred to me that was a difference that was vast, right? The British nature of the cruise line tends to manifest in a number of ways. Talking about how the ship is too big after choosing to get on a cruise ship that is the 9th largest in the world. You will encounter hardly any foreigners, like no foreigners, right? The only foreigners are the staff. You're lucky if you encounter an American. Mourning. Oh, no, this is a hot topic, right? Because people have a right to complain. Yes, people have a right to complain, but, you know, find something you dislike and move on. Or mention it to customer service and have it resolved. I don't mean roaming around like a sour-faced gammon, talking about it and fun-sponging everyone else's cruise. So yeah, it's a very British vibe, which 95% of the time is invisible to you, until the 5% of the time it's not. Okay, let's bring this to a conclusion. Should you go on Iona? Well, I went on it once, then I went on it again for twice as long. So I obviously like the ship. The only reason I may go on it again is it gets overly familiar. Familiarity breeds contempt for me, while for others it generates appeal. What I would say is cruising on Iona is a very price-sensitive experience for me. Even if you put to one side that I'm looking for a price that adds no more than 30% solo supplement, right, which is a factor and isn't guaranteed, what I am actually looking for is a cheaper price, as I'm not convinced Iona is worth a premium price. Would I go on Iona if the itinerary and cost were the same as Princess or Royal Caribbean? Probably not, but that's a time and place for me and where I'm at, because I want to try those other cruise lines and I've not done that yet. I would say this, if the price and itinerary are right, you should certainly give Iona a go. I found both cruises fantastic. I just am very price sensitive to them.